There comes a moment in Yakutia when the cold stops being weather and becomes an enemy. A sharp thinking enemy. The kind that bites through wool, crawls past fur, and turns your breath into tiny shards of ice. At minus 70 degrees Celsius, even the air feels heavy, as if the world is holding its breath, waiting to see who survives the night. And inside a small wooden house with no insulation, a family does something most of us would never imagine. They rely not on walls, but on wisdom. Wisdom carved from winters that break the unprepared. No humming furnace, no thick padding, just timber reindeer hide and the quiet knowledge of how to stay alive when the cold starts hunting. The father seals the last ember. The mother shapes a warm pocket of air around the bed. The children breathe fog into the dim room. Outside, the cold presses in. Inside, warmth holds its ground. In a Yakut winter, the cold doesn't wait. It slides under doors. It creeps across wooden floorboards. It moves low like a silent animal hunting for warm feet and unguarded ankles. Inside a small log house with no insulation, that danger is real because cold air sinks, and on a floor that sits just inches above frozen ground, the cold bites first, hard, sharp, silent. The Yakut learned this long ago. They didn't try to fight the cold at its strongest point. They did something smarter, something older. They simply rose above it. The discovery was simple. If the cold hugs the floor, then don't sleep on the floor. Move the bed up just a few hand widths, 40 to 60 centimeters. Not high, but high enough to escape the layer where the air turns glassy and brittle. So they built a wooden frame, thick planks, strong legs, a small platform that lifted the family into a thin pocket of surviving warmth. A place where breath doesn't freeze as fast, where reindeer hides hold their heat longer, where the night feels slightly less hostile. The payoff came immediately. You could feel it the moment you climbed onto the raised bed. The bite faded, the sting softened, the silence stopped cracking against your skin. And in that warm pocket of air, fragile but real, a family could finally sleep. Most houses today forget this old wisdom. We think warmth comes only from heaters, wires, vents. But the Yakut show us something else. Sometimes the smartest way to survive the cold is simply to step above it. A small trick, a quiet trick, an ancient Siberian trick, and it still works tonight. And every night, the cold tries to win. Inside a Yakut log house, the cold finds every gap, every crack between the timbers, every place where the wind can whisper through the walls. And on a night close to minus 70 Celsius, that whisper turns sharp enough to steal warmth right off your skin. The Yakut knew they could never seal a wooden house perfectly, not in a land where the air turns to glass, not when frozen wind pushes through the walls like a living thing. So they created something simple, something brilliant. A room inside a room. A small world of warmth floating inside the larger frozen one. The discovery was quiet, but powerful. If the cold is everywhere, build a smaller place the cold cannot reach. They hung 2 layers around the family bed, thick cloth on the outside and fur on the inside. The cloth stopped the drafts. The fur held the heat. Together they made a tiny chamber where breath didn't turn to frost so fast, where thin warmth became stubborn warmth, where a family could survive the long black hours. A double curtain may sound small, but the payoff was incredible. Inside that little heat pocket, the temperature could rise 4, even 7 degrees higher than the rest of the room. 4 degrees can be the difference between shaking in the dark and finally falling asleep. 7 degrees can be the difference between danger and safety. And all of this without a single piece of modern insulation, just fabric, fur, and a wisdom carved by permafrost. Most people today think warmth comes from machines, but the Yakut remind us warmth is something you make, something you shape, something you trap and protect with your own hands. A primitive thermal pod, built by firelight, and still undefeated by the cold. In the deep Yakut night, the fire always loses first. The cold waits for that moment, the moment when the flames fade and the last ember exhales its faint glow. And when it does, the cold bites hard. It rushes across the floor, climbs the bed legs, and steals warmth faster than you can wake up. A wood stove can keep you alive, but in Yakutia, it cannot keep burning until morning. Not when the outside air sits near -70 Celsius, heavy and sharp, like broken glass. So the Yakut turned to a wiser idea, an old Siberian trick born long before modern heaters. They heated the bed from below. The discovery was simple. If the fire dies too early, then let the heat keep working long after the flames are gone. They built a firebox, a small tray, filled with slow-burning embers. They slid it under the edge of the bed. Then they packed the sides with earth and stones, trapping the warmth so it released slowly, steadily, all night long. The effect was almost magical. The bed stayed warm for 6, even 8 hours. No need to wake up, no need to feed the fire again. Just a silent pocket of surviving heat rising from below, soft, steady, stubborn. This wasn't technology. This wasn't engineering. This was human intuition, understanding how heat moves, how wood cools, how stones hold warmth like memory. Long before radiant floor heating had a name, the Yakut were living with it, building it, sleeping on top of it, and in a land where breath turns to frost and silence cracks under the weight of the cold. This trick could mean the difference between shivering awake and making it to morning. A quiet wisdom, a fire that keeps working even after it dies, an ember beneath the frozen world. In a land where the cold bites deeper each hour, clothing is not enough. Blankets are not enough. Even thick modern fabric freezes when breath turns into frost. But Reindeer were built by this land. Their fur survives winters where the air turns to glass, where silence cracks under the weight of burning cold. And the Yakut learned to use that gift better than anyone alive. They discovered that 3 layers of reindeer hide could stop heat loss almost completely. Not magic, not guesswork, just a wisdom carved by permafrost. The system is simple but powerful. Layer 1, the bottom hide fur facing down, blocking the cold rising from the floor. Layer 2, the middle hide, a thick cushion of hollow hairs holding thousands of tiny pockets of air. Layer 3, the top hide, soft fur pulled tight over the body, trapping the last thin warmth your skin makes. 3 layers, 3 barriers, 1 insulated cocoon. Science later proved what the Yakut already knew. Every reindeer hair is a tube, a hollow straw filled with micro-air, and thousands of those tubes create stubborn heat. Heat that refuses to leave. Heat that survives the night. The payoff was immediate. Inside that cocoon, convective heat loss dropped to almost 0. The cold couldn't pull warmth away. The bed stayed warm even when the air outside clawed at -70 Celsius. Modern people chase high-tech insulation, but the Yakut saw insulation living and breathing right in front of them. They didn't invent a solution. They borrowed it from the animal that conquered Siberia first. A natural technology, a gift from the land, a shield of fur against a frozen world. And tonight, like every night in Yakutia, that cocoon still wins. Out here in nights where the cold bites straight through wood and fur, one body alone is never enough. Heat escapes, warmth thins, and a single sleeper becomes a small island, losing its shore. The Yakut learned this early, long before science measured heat loss in calories or degrees. They watched how the cold punished anyone sleeping apart, while families who stayed close made it through the night with steady breath and quiet skin. The discovery was simple, almost ancient instinct clustered together, and the warmth multiplies. Their method was precise. Children in the center where the warmth is safest. Adults around them, a living wall against the burning cold. Reindeer hides pulled over everyone, fur tight against the skin, trapping a shared pocket of heat. 3 bodies become one hearth. 5 bodies become a furnace. A whole family becomes a stubborn glow that refuses to die. Inside that cluster, something remarkable happens. Body heat rises, bounces, and returns. No one becomes a cold spot. The temperature stays stable even when the air outside sinks toward minus 70 Celsius, a point where exposed skin can freeze in under 90 seconds. This isn't just survival physics. It's the old Siberian trick, a wisdom carved by permafrost, a reminder that humans survive not through single strength, but through connection. You see it in musk oxen forming their circle, in penguins rotating through the center of the huddle, and you see it here, a Yakut family lying close breath, turning into frost above them yet warm below the hides. A faint glow, a stubborn warmth, a fragile comfort that lasts until morning, and in the darkest hours, when the silence feels heavy enough to crack. That simple human closeness becomes the reason they wake up alive. In a land where the cold bites so hard the air turns to glass, even the walls steal warmth. No insulation, no mercy, just frozen timber pulling heat out of the room, one breath at a time. So the Yakut turned to something older than fire itself stone, silent, heavy, loyal to heat in a way wood could never be. They discovered that a single warm stone kept close could anchor the entire night. Not bright like a flame, but steady, patient, stubborn. Here's how they did it. They heated stones deep inside the wood stove until they glowed with ember heat. Then they set them into a small, earth-lined pit beside the bed, packed with dirt and ringed with thick pieces of wood and river rock. The earth slowed the release. The stone held the core heat, and all night long, a thin surviving warmth radiated out across the sleeping space. 3 hours, 5 hours, 8 hours. Warmth that refuses to die. Inside that glow, the cold outside feels distant, like a predator pacing the edge of the forest, but unable to cross the threshold. This was their ancient thermal battery, a technology shaped not by metal or wires, but by patience and stone. The same principle used in modern saunas, now hidden beneath polished walls and clean tiles. But born here in a wooden house under a burning cold. A faint glow, a quiet heat, a wisdom carved by permafrost. Before a Yakut family ever slips under the reindeer hides, they warm themselves first. Because in a night where the cold bites hard and the air turns to glass, your own body is the first wall of defense, and the first thing the cold tries to break. If you crawl into bed with a low core temperature, the danger is immediate hypothermia can start its quiet work in 15 to 20 minutes. So the Yakut follow an old Siberian pattern, slow, steady, intentional. They breathe deep, long breaths that sting the throat but wake the warmth inside the lungs. They move their hands, their legs, their shoulders. Not exercise, just gentle motion that pushes blood toward the skin. Then comes the fuel, warm fish fat, or a small spoon of thick frozen milk warmed near the fire. High-fat food that burns hot and slow, building a pocket of inner heat. And when they finally slip into the layered hides, they bring that heat with them. The bed doesn't have to create warmth, it only has to protect it. That's the secret. A warmth that starts inside, not outside, because the Yakut never believed they were just heating a house. They were heating a body, a life, a heartbeat trying to stay bright in a land where silence cracks under minus 70 degrees Celsius. It's the same principle modern cold weather athletes use today. Warm first, sleep safe, survive the night. A quiet ritual, a stubborn heat, a wisdom carved by permafrost. When the night in Yakutia finally settles, it settles heavy. The cold outside doesn't fade. It waits, pressing its weight against the wooden walls, testing every crack, every breath, every choice a family makes to stay alive. And yet, inside that tiny room, a different world exists. A faint glow from the stove's last ember, the soft rustle of reindeer hide, the slow, steady breathing of people who have learned to survive, not through insulation, but through understanding. Heat isn't an accident here, it's a craft, a discipline, a wisdom carved by generations who listened to the cold and learned how to bend around it instead of fighting head-on. And as the family drifts into sleep, wrapped in stubborn heat and ancient knowledge, one truth fills the silence. Warmth endures. 2 words: human fire.